Welcome, everybody. I'm Marla Miller from marlamiller.com, and I'm presenting the second season, and I believe it's the third or the fourth episode of Lit Salon Prose Talk Prose. Just very briefly, for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, I launched this platform on Google Plus last year because I've been in the writing business for a very long time, and I've been associated with fine writing conferences for years and years and years. And my concern with indie publishing is that writers are kind of jumping the gun. And I thought if writers could tune into a show like Lit Salon, listen to the pros, talk about just the struggle of building a platform, the excitement of building a platform, how long it takes to write well enough for other people to want to pay good money to read your books. I just thought that it would be an inspiring show. And so far, so good. Today, I'm just delighted that I have an old friend on who I met at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference. Matt Pallamary was a brand new workshop leader, I believe, when I attended my first Santa Barbara Writers Conference back in 1989. And at that time, he was writing horror, and I'm not a big horror fan, however, because it scares me, literally, it just scares me. But I had a radio show at that time as well, and asked Matt to come on and talk about The Small Dark Room of the Soul, which was his first short story collection. And we've just been terrific buddies and supports for each other and within our writing community for over 20 years. Matt Pallamary, welcome to Lit Salon Prose Talk Prose. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Marla, thank you for having me on, and thanks for the wonderful intro.
Yeah, here's another thing that when you develop your network with writers, and I know that Matt will agree with me, sometimes programs work, sometimes they don't, sometimes workshops work, sometimes they don't. As you develop your network in your writing life, you can lean on those writers to help you out. And Matt and I have been figuring out this darn Google Hangout for the last 20 minutes or so, and we finally got it working. And that's one of the reasons why you go to writers' conferences, because you get to meet people who will be in your corner when you need it, and they know that you'll be in theirs. And I think for the most part, Maddie, you and I have been, haven't we?
Absolutely. We're all family.
We are family. Sometimes we call ourselves a dysfunctional family, but nonetheless, we are family. Matt has also been teaching workshops at the Southern California Writers Conference, which is coming up on President's Day weekend. I will be there as well. Thrilled, as always, to be associated with SCWC. Matt, you have had an incredible career, and if you don't mind, if this is going to work, I want to share your Amazon author page. Here we go. Let's see if it's going to do it. Yeah, it does. Matt, would you talk a bit about way back in the day when you started in horror? Did you think that you would be at it some 25 years later?
Well, I'm happy to be alive, and I'm happy that I woke up on this side of the dirt. You said an old friend, and I was really listening to that old word.
Yeah, well, we're getting up there, but you know what? It's like fine wine, Matthew. Writers, the one thing about the writing life that I think is, there's some ageism in it, but writers, as you well know, and our listeners well know, can write until we do go on the other side. So that's a good thing. Tell me about so you started out in horror. I have read all of your short stories. They are scary, scary, scary. Scary enough for Ray Bradbury to give you an amazing blurb, more than once, I think. And your latest book, Night Whispers, maybe you could share with us the arc of your writing life briefly and get us to Night Whispers and why you have come back to horror.
Well, I never really left it.
I know.
That's really the truth of it. But,
yeah.
As you know, and maybe some of the audience knows, I've been going into the Amazon for 15 years now, and I've been studying shamanism most of my life. And in those journeys, I do extended shamanic plant diets in the jungle where they're very deep, deep, deep psychological explorations. So to put things in a nutshell and summarize them, when you study as much as I have and you're studying those kind of things, there's equal equal energy and such, and emphasis is given to the light and the darkness. So there are so many people who say, oh, I just want to be spiritual and I just want to see the light, and they ignore the dark at their peril.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have the light without the darkness. As dark as it is how bright the light is going to be, and vice versa. That you can't separate them. So my a large portion of my life has been exploring the light and the darkness equally, and that's actually reflected in my writing. One of the things I get a kick out of, and it dawned on me when I was doing this thing a while back, if you look at the progression writing career, The Small Dark Room is a black cover with this eerie, spooky green.
Mm-hmm.
My next novel is Land Without Evil, which is a historical novel deeply into shamanism. And if you look at that, that's a brighter green and beautiful feathers and a little brighter light.
Yep. Right
and
over
then, of
here.
course,
Yep.
Yeah. And then, of course, came Spirit Matters, which is blue and heavenly looking and brighter still.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had my collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
When I did Dreamland, I collaborated with a famous disc jockey, a wonderful friend he was part of the Santa Barbara Writers Conference. He's been deceased now for probably over a dozen years, but that one's in between. And then when I get into A Short Walk to the Other Side, which is my second short story collection, which is dedicated to Mr. Bradbury, that one's kind of Twilight. You know, it's kind of sparkly star. It's kind of in the middle between the worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had Eye of the Predator, which is kind of dark, and it's a dark cover of a cat's eye. And there was Cyber Christ, which is more in the middle. And now I'm back to Night Whispers, which is very dark.
Scary.
Yeah, scary. And actually, it's been one of my more popular books, frankly, which is really fascinating.
Well, quite frankly, Matt, that doesn't surprise me because you really write horror very, very well. I only read the first paragraph, the first chapter of Night Whispers, and you really know how to go dark. And I think that the point that you just made, as you kind of gave us the chronology of your stories, I think maybe what you're saying is that you've started dark and then you went toward the light and now you're dipping back in the dark, and I would expect that even Night Whispers there's a lot of light woven into that. Am I assuming wrong?
No, that's correct. You know, it's funny, speaking of the arc of my career, and this is proven to be true, I was told some years ago by someone, and I don't remember who it was, but it was a spiritual type of person, it might have even been a shaman, said to me, my job is to bring the darkness into the light when it's too light. Mm-hmm. And when it's too dark, it's my job to bring the light into the darkness.
Mm-hmm. I think that's your career. I mean, I'm looking at your books, Matt, and I know you very well. That's your career.
Yeah, no, that is. It's been very significant for me to do that in that way. And for me, in my shamanic journeys and explorations, and I've gone deeper than most.
Yes, you have.
I've been in the most exquisitely sublime realms, heavenly realms that I can't even begin to articulate. And I've been through the darkest depths of hell and terror and awe that I can't really articulate. And one of the keys to shamanism is learning to navigate. So whether I'm in a heavenly realm or a dark, hellish realm, I'm centered and I can navigate, and they get equal weight from me. I don't, in a lot of cultures, particularly in shamanic ones, they don't see dark in the darkness. They don't see it as evil. They just see it as another end of the spectrum that balances everything out, because everything seeks balance, and that's really the key.
Well, it's interesting. My background is psychotherapy, and as I look at the breadth of your work, it's an interesting mix for me. And I would say that in your work, you look like you're always trying to achieve balance.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, The Small Dark Room of the Soul is actually an examination of the human shadow.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I say that because of your psychology background.
Yeah, and also that I read that whole collection, and it still scares me. It was so well done. It really was, Matt.
Yeah.
You really do know how to capture that essence without leaving the reader there, because you take them there, but you also bring them out. I would love to talk with you a bit because your platform is so amazingly developed, and we're looking at probably at least 25 years of, I mean, you were developing your platform long before platform developing was even a term that we used. I mean, we didn't use that back in the day.
Right.
Tell me about, how do you have a method? Do you plot it out? How is it that you are able to kind of keep one foot in that supernatural world and then the other foot in the very real social media world, and merge those two to expand your presence here? How much time do you devote to do that?
Well, one thing I have to point out, you just defined shamanism.
Did I?
Yes, because a shaman is a person who can go and be at home in the supernatural realms, so to speak,
Yeah.
and then come back to the real world and bring what you discover out there in your explorations to the real world, and to have your foot in both worlds and to be a bridge. That's a definition of shamanism.
Well, that's what you've been doing since I've known you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because I have a background in technology, as you well know.
Yes, I do.
My last corporate job was my title was deputy manager of site support services for a huge corporation.
Mm-hmm.
I had 25 technicians who worked for me in 18 buildings, and we were in charge of all the technology: cables, hubs, routers, PCs, servers, email, you name it,
Yeah.
LANs, WANs. We took care of all of that. Now, to have that as a life,
Mm-hmm.
and then go from there into the jungle, where when I get to my tambo, which is my open air hut in the jungle, there's a big like 5-liter thing of water waiting
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
a pallet bed with a mosquito net, toilet paper, candles, and a cigarette lighter, and a hammock. That's it. Right? And so and there's no electricity there at all. In fact, I had a friend who if you look at the pictures of the world at night and they have all the lights and they have the big black spots,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the middle of one of the black spots in Peru in the jungle.
Do you write when you're there, Matt?
No.
Not at all.
No, what I did, it's funny you should ask that too, because I'm a writer and I'm writing all the time.
Yeah, right.
So when I go there, I don't want to be working.
Okay.
So what I started to do way back from the very beginning is I have a cassette recorder which just broke. And instead of writing and journaling like a quote unquote normal person would do, I had my recorder.
Got
and
it.
I recorded all my experiences on cassette tapes.
Really good idea.
Yeah, so the first time I came back with 15 tapes, and I have stuff like,
Wow.
I just farted. I had to record that. Or, I woke up this morning. Or, I mean, all this silly stuff.
Yeah.
And then the second year, I maybe had 8 tapes. The third year, I had 6. Then I had 3, then 2. And now the past 4 or 5 years, I don't record anymore.
You don't.
I don't. But when I finished my memoir, Spirit Matters, which was all about going into the jungle and my visionary experiences, for lack of better words, the whole last part of it ends in the jungle, and that whole thing I transcribed directly from the recordings that I had. And of course, then I could polish it and edit it and make it, coherent. But that stuff became very valuable. This is a little aside note, but I'm working on the history of the Santa Barbara Writers Conference.
Yeah, I know you are.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you know all about that. So
Okay.
we have 30 years.
Tell our audience. Yeah, tell our listeners.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So me and Mary Conrad, who is one of the original founders of the conference, it started in 1973, and Armando Nieto. The 3 of us are having a 3-way collaboration of writing the history of the Santa Barbara Writers Conference. We're going through 30 years of photo albums, and we have 30 years of tapes. And when I got home yesterday, my Amazon order came in, and because my other cassette player broke, and it's an awesome cassette player that plugs right into your USB port.
Cool.
And then records it as an MP3, so we can digitize all that wonderful information. Lectures by Ray Bradbury and William Styron and Gore Vidal and Buckley and Alex Haley, and the list goes on and on and on.
It sure does.
So I got off on a tangent there, but the point is I was recording everything on cassette.
Well, when you were talking about that, I remember how Ray Bradbury used to say that when one of his pieces of advice, one of his many pieces of advice that we heard over the many years that he delivered the keynote at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference on opening night was write and then put it away in a drawer. And go back to it without looking. And he said, you don't have to worry because all the good stuff will be in your head. Yeah. And the stuff that isn't good, you don't want anyway.
That's right.
And I remember listening to that and being like, oh my God, how could you possibly do that? Then in my own experience with an editor who I hired from the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, did a manuscript, was pleased with it, redid it, did a lot of editing, worked with him intimately, and at the end of it, he said what Ray said to all of us. He said, what I'd like you to do is put it away and then come back and start over and don't look at it. And I couldn't do it then. Yeah. I couldn't do it. I just simply couldn't do it because I wasn't, I think, a secure enough writer. And what I hear you saying is that you have let go of the documentation because I'm guessing, because chances are all the good stuff's here anyway. You're just going to bring it back and put it in story in some form or another. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's right. And also, the experiences I've had in the jungle, as I mentioned, I've been going there now for 15 years. I probably have more than 6 months total time in the jungle now.
Amazing.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say all the experiences I could go down. Well, let's just say for argument's sake, this last year I was down there in October, and I could have a particular meaningful vision, and it will connect to one that I had 5 years ago or 10 years ago. The dots connect in different ways, and the big thing that I do down there is exploring my subconscious. And as any writer who has had any time in the chair and at the keyboard will tell you, especially our good, wonderful friend Sid Stiebel, that your subconscious is your writing partner.
You got it.
And so you got to learn how to. It's like courting a beautiful woman. You got to flatter it and feed it and give it what it wants. And
be nice.
Yeah, be nice, and then it will deliver for you.
Yeah. Along those lines, Matt, is there one thing that you could, for the new authors or new writers who are out here and they're, frustrated with platform building? What does it mean? How do I do it? It's too hard. It takes too much time. Any pieces of advice that you can offer vis-a-vis your own experience with? I mean, you do radio, you do video, you do blog posts. I mean, you're just out there. Any advice?
Well, for starters, I'll have to agree with you. I am out there, and that's a whole other issue which we won't explore.
Yeah, no. For the purposes of Lit Salon, out there meaning social media.
Yeah.
I'm
being funny. Well,
I know.
You have to put in the time because nobody else will. And it's very difficult, especially in this day and age where it's so easy for people to publish their books, and most of it is crap.
Yep.
And so that very much muddies the water, and you can tell the worst ones, they're either giving them away or you get 18 posts every hour. Buy my book, buy my book, buy my book.
Right.
Which is our friend MSG's one of his pet peeves, and I don't blame him.
It's mine too.
But if you don't put it out there, then how is anybody going to know it's there?
Well, but okay, so this is a good place for me to jump in, because I know a little bit about marketing your muse. I know a little bit about platform building. I know a lot about how you've done it, and you do not do that, Matt. You do not say buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. You don't. What you do is you offer interviews. You offer. You let people know if you're in this genre, this might be a good place for you. I just found an opportunity to do a blog post, et cetera, et cetera. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple of pieces to this now that we're delving into this part of it that I feel are very important. Okay. One, okay, I mentioned you have to put the time in.
Yep.
Period. I'm right now 405 pages, first draft, into a really smoking science fiction novel that I think is going to hit big.
Good.
For other reasons, which we can get into, but I don't want to get off track about the marketing. I'm also working on the Santa Barbara book. I'm also editing and tutoring. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow morning when I get up, I got a whole book I'm going to edit and lay out for a doctor. I have to put the time in.
Yeah.
So just this past week, I was deeply, deeply at work on the Santa Barbara conference, and I had to put all my projects aside, and I had to spend a day promoting a radio show that I was doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, there's a couple of things that I think are very important. I have this insane little master plan in my head. Everything's on my webpage. I try to lure people back to my webpage or to my Amazon page through what I post, but I don't do it directly. So aside from posting books and interviews and radio shows and TV shows and those kind of things that I've done, I also make sure I post other things that are related to writing that don't necessarily directly relate to me.
Good.
So if I'm posting on a particular writing website and I'll say, okay, here's where you can get 200 free screenplays, I'll post it. Here's advice from, for argument's sake, here's advice from Stephen King I found, or here's a great editor's piece. I post all those too.
Exactly.
So when people see me coming, so what are we going to get from this guy today? Well, maybe we'll get a chapter from his book. Maybe we'll hear about his book. Maybe we'll hear about the writers' conference. Maybe we'll hear about some new writer, because I'm so dialed into all these different groups that I'm sharing the information. So everything that I post is useful.
Exactly. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
If you want people, it's the universe. I mean, let's go back to the universe. If you want people to help you, you help them. It's kind of simple.
Absolutely.
It's and even though we're in 21st century communication, that hasn't changed. Networking means they will support you if they know that you're not just out there to pick their pockets, or if they know that you're not just out there to be self-aggrandizing.
Yeah.
People will do that, and so I think that's a really important delineation. You offer a lot of wonderful guidance to writers.
And thank you. And a lot of it's my own, and a lot of it I've gotten from other writers.
Exactly.
And I'm singing on. Another thing I do, which may not be popular with anybody who's listening or watching this, but you hear all this crap. Oh, build your platform. You got to have a blog. Well, I don't think so.
I don't either.
Used to be 5 years ago.
Used to be, right.
Hot shit then, but not now.
I agree.
So yeah. So what I do I'm getting requested. I've been doing about an interview a week since the year started.
Good.
And people are asking for me. They're approaching me, such as yourself.
Exactly.
Right? You and I are a little different because we've got so much history, but ultimately the same.
Well, but let me just jump in and make a point. I ask for interviews. Yes, we're friends, but you're a good interviewee. So I know that if you're going to be on, you have experience. You're willing to go where I need you to go. I can trust you as an interviewee. That's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, in fact, I think I told you the other day, I did a really great show on Wednesday night. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they did is they looked at the last interview that I did with you, which was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, wow, we saw what you did in Marla Miller's Marketing the Muse. We want to get into that. And I'm like, sure, let's go for it.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I think writers can take away from this is when you get invited, you might not be getting invited, but your goal is to get invited to hangouts like this, um, to perhaps blogs, although I think blogs are dead in the water. But you want to collect experience. So get out there. Your first interviews are going to be probably awful. However, keep doing
Yeah.
them because this is 21st century marketing, and that's what we have to do if we want to expand our platform and get people to buy our books.
Yeah. There's a couple of other things I want to add.
Good. And then I want to talk about your workshop experience too as part of your platform building, but go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. I make it a point to be on other people's blogs.
Good. Me too.
I'm a blog
Me
hopper.
too. Me
When
too.
I get asked, I'm not going to start my own. I'm not going to sit there. If you want to find out about writing from me, come to my workshop or read my fantastic fiction with a PH book. It's all in there. Or listen to one of my interviews. But I'm not going to sit there and try to say, oh, this week's blog is don't use too many adverbs.
Exactly.
You know,
not me either.
Yeah, I'm way past that.
Yeah, me too.
Now, the other couple of things I have in my favor, one is I had a following prior to all the social media stuff. My first novel was published in hardcover. I had 2 or 3 books in print before that happened. So I was able to bridge those two. And when I publish either as ebooks or tree books. I publish both. So in terms of those venues, I'm available on all of those. But here's the thing. Every time I go on somebody else's blog and show, I have their whole audience that I haven't really been exposed to.
That's right.
Exactly. Not only that, but I have my own audience that they haven't been exposed to.
Exactly.
So it really is a collaboration. They get me on the show and they give me the stuff and I go out and I post it and press releases and they do the same for me and we go back and forth. And then we expand our reach. They expand into my world and I expand into theirs.
It's so critical, and I've been doing this for so long, Matt, as you well know, and I've offered a lot of free content just to increase my presence online. And what writers just don't get, many writers don't get, is that they really should remember that if you're giving to them, they really need to then give back. So if they're saying yes to you, then that means that there's going to be something. And I don't mean this to sound mercenary. It's not about money. It's just about if I'm taking the time to put you on my show or you're taking the time to put me on your show, then the least I can do is share it all over the universe. That's the least I can do. And a lot of writers don't do that. They take the interview and I'm not sure what they do with it. So if there's another tip, I think both you and I are saying, when you get on somebody's show, when you get on somebody's, give them something. I happen to follow very well-known writers on Facebook. I don't really post a whole lot of my own theories about I don't. Like you, number one, I just don't have the patience for that. I'm not a well-known writer. I can write okay. But I follow the writers who are out there, and boy, do they appreciate that. And if writers would that's another tip. Go follow famous writers on Facebook. They love it. And people think they don't pay attention. They do pay attention because like you, like me, they're expanding their platform too.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny too with the social media. This has happened to me in different ways, but relatively recently I had posted something about my memoir somewhere.
Yeah.
Twitter, I think. And I got a personal tweet back from, I think it's Shannon Tweed, I think. She's Gene Simmons' wife.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She wrote me back, wow, this sounds like a really great book. I want to get it. And it was very I was like, wow, cool. Gene Simmons' wife thinks I'm cool. Right?
Absolutely.
Because you never know. You and I are on that Sue network, and we're sort of kind of friends with Isai Morales there, the great actor.
We sure are. Yes, we are. And I support him. I don't support all of his stuff. He doesn't support all of my stuff. And I'm sure the same is true with you. I guess that what we're both saying is that don't be intimidated by these big names because these big names are on social media for a reason. Same reason that you're on it. They're looking for support. period.
Absolutely.
So that's just a very easy thing that writers can. If you're going to be on social media, go find the writers who are ahead of you, follow them, support them, and learn from them. It just makes sense. So for horror writers, for people who are writing anything that has to do with the other world, from shamanism to vampires, they should follow you because you've been in the biz for a long time. Not to say that everything that you do is going to work for them, but you've been around the block a few times. So it makes sense to include in your network seasoned vets.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot, like you say, a lot of them are friends of mine. I've known a lot of them for years and years.
Absolutely.
I've had people who have been in my workshops who have gone way beyond me financially with my writing. They were students at one time.
Let's talk about that. So you have been associated with the Santa Barbara Writers Conference and the Southern California Writers Conference for long decades, as I have. Not SCWC. I came on board, I think, in 2005, SCWC. But we are rooted in writing conferences because we really believe in writing conferences and have learned a lot from workshops in writing conferences. Talk a little bit about your workshop, because you are really good at helping writers organize story from what you hear. I mean, I just sat in a workshop of yours. You're good at it. Talk a little bit about what you do.
Well, a couple of things. I've been at both conferences now for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I always like to say that I really can't teach anybody how to write, but I can teach them how not to write.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's
great. So, because I've been blessed by people like Ray Bradbury and Barnaby Conrad and, Charles Sparky Scholes,
mm-hmm.
Chuck Champlin, who was the leading LA Times film critic for 25 years.
Indeed.
As you know, these guys they were all like my writing uncles.
Mm-hmm.
They took me in. I was the youngest workshop leader at Santa Barbara for 15 years. And I just now kind of dawning on me why they took me in the way they did. Because if you're writing dramatically, if you're not doing it for the love of it, you're looking for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in this day and age. So I've been able to really absorb the primary philosophy of the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, which is an approach more to craft than anything else.
Absolutely.
Even though we've had major, big, huge, epic names keynoting at the conference, the core of it is craft.
It's craft.
It's not one of these conferences, hey, you can come and, for an extra $150, you can go have dinner with Ray Bradbury.
Right.
Not
that.
Hey, come over here and for an extra $50, you can worship at the feet of, whoever.
Some literary agent I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and that's all crap. The wonderful things about these conferences is that you really get to hang out and rub elbows. You get to have breakfast. The first time I met Sparky Charles Schultz, I got invited to have breakfast with him, and we spent 3 hours, and he wanted to know about me.
Yep.
Here's the god of cartoons, and he's like, well, what are you doing, and how about you, and what are you writing, and how, blah, 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 and all that, right?
Right.
And that is the difference.
Yeah, and I think that in our 21st century reality, not enough writers are getting to conferences to have that experience, and I really, really encourage them to do that because you cannot beat it. And until you sit at the feet of truly iconic authors who have been at it forever, I don't really think you get the full picture of what it means to be in this writing life. So I always encourage writers to save their pennies. We've got a conference coming up in a couple of weeks in San Diego. I believe it's their 30th anniversary of the Southern California Writers Conference.
Yes.
Michael and Wes have been leading that conference for 3 decades, and it is, while it's a shorter conference, it's a long weekend, it is focused, wouldn't you agree, Matt? It's a craft-oriented conference.
Well, especially me personally, my role in it is all about craft. I do the advanced critiques. I do the rogue workshops at late night workshops.
Yes.
And I speak about dramatic writing.
Exactly.
And I say that because now I've done plays, musicals, short stories, screenplays, novels, memoir. I mean, I've done them all. And primary thing, my workshop is now Fantastic Fiction with a PH, P-H-A-N-T-A-S-T-I-C. And I recently published a book which is called Fantastic Fiction, A Shamanic Approach to Story. And it's really an overview of dramatic writing, because one of the key things in shamanism is to travel to the underworld, face the demon or demons, get dismembered and destroyed, and then get reborn. That has been going on since before any history, and that, in the end, is the essence of the hero's journey, which is the core of what a story is.
You bet. Absolutely.
So that's
here's what I'm going to say, Matt. I'm going to wind this interview up. We could talk for a lot longer. You're going to come back and talk more about the book that you're writing with Mary Conrad as that matures. But if you want to meet Matt Pallamary, if you want to attend one of his workshops, he is going to be in San Diego at the Southern California Writers Conference over the weekend of February 2nd through the 15th, I think. I will be there as well. I'm going to be doing a rogue workshop and focusing on openings. We're adding that to the workshop schedule this year. And Matt, when you're at that conference, I happen to know that you are always available. You don't go hiding after your workshops. You are always hanging, talking to writers. So I would really recommend that you, if you're listening to this interview right now, we're going to hang up, go to the Southern California Writers Conference and sign up. It's affordable and it's really fantastic, with an F and a PH. Wouldn't you agree, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. As a small aside, aside from doing the rogue workshops, I'll be doing a lecture on fantastic fiction and that whole shamanic approach.
Cool.
And then Michael has also asked me to do one on bios and social media presentation, which is what you and I have been touching upon here.
Cool.
So I'm doing that lecture also. So I'll be doing 2 lectures and I think 3 late night workshops.
Wonderful. Any last words of advice that you can offer our Lit Salon audience, Matt, before we hang up this call and promise to get you back on?
Okay, two gems. One which is not original, and the second one probably isn't either. But the first one is writing equals ass in chair.
Amen.
That's like sort of the prime directive. The second one, which I always tell my students, and it's because I write horror and weird stuff, puke on the page.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that, without getting off on a huge tangent, is if you're connected to the muse and it's flowing, that's more important than anything else. And you should get it down. Don't even care about punctuation or anything. If that flow is happening, that's the most critical thing, because too many writers censor themselves and edit themselves and think this isn't good enough. You got to put all that bullshit aside.
Absolutely.
Let that flow go. And then you can go back forever and polish and edit and rewrite. But those are probably the 2 best pieces of advice I can share.
And I think that in 21st century marketing, I'll wrap up with this. In 21st century publishing and marketing, not enough writers are bleeding or puking on the page. They're using their head to think about what might be selling this week or next year. I say put that aside, put that marketing aside, put that editor cap aside. It's not time for any of that. The only thing you should be doing if you really want to write long prose in fiction or nonfiction is connecting to here, the heart. Connecting here, put it on the page. We'll clean it up later.
Yes. And also shamanic.
There you go. You know, maybe I'll join you in one of these Peruvian. I won't, because you know I'm petrified of bugs, but that's another story for another time. Matt Pallamary, as always, thank you very much for being on Lit Salon Prose Talk Prose. You indeed are a pro, and you have really shared some wonderful tips with our audience, and I look forward to the next time we have you on.
Great. Thank you so much, and as you well know, I will post this all over the place.
I know you will, babe. I absolutely know you will. To our listeners of Lit Salon, thanks very much. Tune in. My next interview is going to be with Sherry Seacard, who is a longtime writer, Her latest book is called Mary Jane, so you know what that's about, and she's a cannabis activist. So I look forward to having her on. Until the next time, be well, keep writing. Again, thank you very much, Matt Pallamary. Give us your website link.
Sure. www.mattpallamary.com. So it's M as in mom, A-T-T-P as in Paul, A-L-L-A, M as in Mary, A-R-Y.com. Come say hi. Drop me a line. I'm there.
He's all over the place. And I am too. You know, we come from that school of working writers, don't we, Matt?
Amen.
Absolutely.
Show up.
Have a lovely Sunday, everyone, and stay tuned for our next Lit Salon Prose Talk Prose. I'm Marla Miller from marlamiller.com.